Hello and welcome to Dice Punks, a tabletop role-playing podcast where we focus on playing full campaigns in less well-known systems. This week in episode 47, our Nobilis must contend with an inauspicious arrival. Hello and welcome. I'm Adam, your friendly neighborhood game master, and joining me are...
Hello there, I'm Drew, and I'll be playing Reorienting, the Viscount of Tempo, back like a bad penny in good company.
I'm Robin, and I'll be playing Lissa Crate, the romantic but wrathful Furious Queen.
And I'll be playing Romnet, prophet to a dead god, and I didn't murder him.
It really sounds like someone who didn't murder that particular
wasn't
guy.
me.
Something that person would say.
I just finished the murders that kept his city separate from itself.
Right, that's true. That's true.
It wasn't me.
I don't think anybody can say that you were the murderer of Mott. All right, well, excellent. Thank you.
I have Shaggy stuck in my head.
Yeah.
I am very deeply sorry. Couple of things real quick before we get into it. On the day that we are recording this, have tested positive for COVID less than 12 hours ago. I am feeling about as good as I have at any point today. And, I am less sniffly and less coughy than I was, but no guarantees that my track won't be full of heavy breathing and congested nose and stuff. Really wanted to get recording done, bolster our buffer and see these lovely folks again, put something out for you all. But please bear with me because I am suffering from the dreadlergy. And I imagine that as the evening wears on, I will flag appreciably. But otherwise, we are due for, character stat growth. So let's start with Romnet's bonus XP roll. Des?
That is a pair of 9s.
Pair of 9s will get you one. Let's see. This one is intricately carved, perfectly clear ice.
Ooh. Mm.
I also rolled. I got a 1. And I was rolling to see how quickly you would recover from the plague. So either you will recover very quickly or very slowly.
Yeah, if you were rolling on the plague's behalf, then that was great news.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I was joking earlier. This is the second January in a row I have gotten COVID, thanks to my day job. I'm joking that I'm going to start trying to speedrun it. We'll see how that goes.
I'll
The
be your
die
commentary
agrees
couch.
with you
I'm
at least.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
I'm choosing
Exactly.
to interpret it as a speed run.
That was duration. Exactly.
Remember this kindness later.
Is there to be any XP expenditure this time?
Not on my part.
No.
Don't think so, no.
All right. Well, that is perfectly fine, which brings us to our recap from last time, courtesy this time of Romnet. Take it away.
So, in the aftermath of our confrontation with the dubiously divine Umber in the plaza with the dead flowers, we persuaded the onlookers to consider a veneration of nothing for both our good and their own. Lissa, to one side, had what seemed like an important conversation with Kea that I was, probably fortunately given the giggling, out of earshot from. I understand that she consulted thereafter with Philia regarding what the Nobilis of Dagun could do to assist and possibly join our efforts. I understand further that there was an invitation to the nightcap. Leorian, in the meantime, checked in with several of his anchors. Again, I was not privy to those discussions. We made our way to the nightcap, where, surprisingly, Veen was tending bar. A grand time was had, including tossing whiskey into the wind for Rymalus's consumption. I murdered the drop that hit the ground. And Philia getting drunk and going out into the storm, along with Lissa, and, for a time, Kaya. Leorian found himself acquiring some groupies after he played less martial music. I was a bit preoccupied with Thad's company, but I imagine that he and, separately, Lissa had lovely nights. The next day, before morning, tragically, before coffee, we awoke to a god-awful racket, which we discovered was at least partly caused by Fermatans fleeing from figures of some indeterminate form that then took on the shapes of those they chased. I attempted first to forestall any murders by these doppelgangers. Others, I'm told, or in Thad's case observed, held their own in their separate battles against these pursuers, but eventually it made sense for me to expend the bulk of my remaining power to create a citywide murder of the doppelgangers. So now I am at last living up to my mantle. As the city set itself to rights, the sun broke through the clouds with all the violence of a desert, and the temperature increased accordingly, causing steam to rise off Philia and Rymalus in their general area, and we found ourselves in the presence of a wounded Fewa. And here we are.
Indeed, thank you very much. So, we basically pick up with everybody kind of where they were at the end of that confrontation with the canal copies, Leorian and Mavia currently, near the nightcap, Romnet near his home, sun coming through the canopy, hot wind blowing into the city and clashing with the sort of sea winds of Rymalus and Philia's presence. And we don't see Fewa currently, but we have the sense that she has entered the city and is hurt. So, we pick up exactly there.
I take it from the description that she is not able to communicate directly, having been seemingly dispersed from her normal form?
You have no idea.
I have no idea. Okay, so...
I mean, you have received no communication from her,
This
unless
is not
the awareness of her presence is a communication.
This is one of those moments where I'm going to go distinctly what Lissa would do and not what Robin would do in this circumstance. And I will greet her out loud and ask what happened.
Well, you don't see her, right? Like, you are by the nightcap. You don't
I'm
know
literally
where she
shouting
is.
into the hot air.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Yeah. You are shouting a greeting and an inquiry as to her location or state.
Yes.
Fair enough. The wind swirls about you, and the light gets harsher but no brighter, and there is no immediate response. Leorian, you hear that, you see that, you are close by. Apatia, too, is nearby, and she looks a little bit baffled, just kind of looking between Lissa and Leorian and the direction that the wind is blowing from. Squinting a little, too.
If I look in the direction from which the wind is blowing, do I see anything with the sight?
I need to make a roll to see how the city is currently laid out after Romnet's whole thing.
We will not be describing it yet.
There was a capital W and a capital T with a small TM sign, trademark sign coming after it.
For clarity, I'm referring to his merging of the quiet and riotous cities several episodes ago. So,
way to take all the fun out of the lack of specificity there.
I decided to do a service to our listeners.
Fair.
turning in the direction from which the wind is blowing, you can see a bright but seemingly flickering presence, not precisely, but just kind of as though it is shining through the buildings, over the roofs, etc., from a point in the direction the wind is coming from. You think... Actually, I should probably make you roll direction for this.
No.
That's what it's for. So yeah, if we could get
Literally anyone else.
you're the one looking.
I would-
Yeah, you have a pool that won't quite cover it. So
I have a pool of one.
Yeah, your sense
kiddie
plus direction
pool.
is 1.
I do, considering there was a shout involved, I do come over and let's say I look in the direction she's looking at, in, since she's looking so fiercely. I do likewise.
Okay. I assume then that your direction pool is rather more plausible. 6 dice, sense plus direction. Go ahead and give me that roll.
Here is my supportive looking roll. That is a pair of 3s.
Okay. You're pretty sure this is back in the direction of the gate square, not that far away, but the flickering concerns you.
Okay. Can I also look with the sight, since things have gotten strange? Or is that all I see even with the sight?
I was assuming you were looking with the sight,
okay.
since you
Just
had
making sure.
conferred first. But yes, that is the whole that there is to see from here.
Okay.
About the time that this is occurring, I exclaim, I think she's that way and in trouble, and then point in like the wrong direction. Like not in a good, like not in the wrong direction, like the opposite direction, but just the wrong heading, going like northeast instead of true north.
There's a beat, and Apatia takes a finger and moves your arm slightly to be pointing in the right direction without saying anything.
I just put my arm down and nod with a slight flush coming to my cheeks. We should hurry.
Apatia nods and starts loping in that direction without another word.
I follow.
Mhm.
Hopefully,
I also
with my
follow.
one aspect. I think I'm still technically maybe at this point, despite
Yeah, you
the
you had
direction
said
foibles.
Lissa before, but
Yeah, that was my bad.
I was just going along with it. But yes, that is fine. Yes, you can perambulate as Mavia Romnet. Any particular actions, reactions?
I'll suggest that Thad get himself some breakfast. There's coffee in the fridge. Or, whatever equivalent there might be.
Probably a cabinet, larder, something like that.
Right. Fridge. Clearly.
Pantry, cellar.
In the coffee box,
Exactly. All the anachronisms necessary to support my coffee habit.
Your countertop actually hinges up and it's just coffee grounds underneath it.
And anyone just entering the house gets a mild caffeine buzz. Just breathing.
That explains a lot.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah. In any event.
Thad blinks, looks up at the sun, blinks, looks back at you and goes, yeah, cool. Should I make you anything?
I think I'm going to have a chat, and I will just sort of point vaguely sunwards.
Sure, yeah. Cool. I'll hold down the fort. And he gives you sort of like a thumbs up and then walks into your house.
I will pause long enough that he probably has his back to me before I return the thumbs up, and then head off toward the sun.
Certainly. All right, everybody's moving in this
Do
direction.
I need to roll direction?
I mean, you could just head into the wind. without knowing where it's taking you. That you can roll direction if you wish to know where you think it, Feywind might be within the city. But if you're just heading in that direction without really
I'll
concerned,
roll sense plus direction since
Sure.
I paid good XP to have that direction point.
go for it. That's 6 dice.
That is a pair of 6s.
All right. Yeah, you sort of look around and you're like, well, it makes sense. She seems to be coming in the gate, and you head that way. So, Romnet, you will arrive just a little ahead of the other two. You were a little slower getting going, but you were also a little closer. But it is not by much. And when you all arrive, you see Feywa sort of sitting, leaning on the broken base of the statue in the square. This is where the sun is piercing through the canopy most. Instead of just isolated, harsh rays, there's actually general sunlight in most parts of this plaza, and the dead flowers around it have actually crumbled into dust in the sunlight. They are just stems currently. Feywa herself looks much like she ever has. Her dress has not changed, but she's a little ragged and very sort of slumped, and it doesn't take a keen eye to see that she has a hole in her chest, more or less through the sternum, and a lot of blood kind of flowing down from it. It's not clear whether she is currently actively bleeding, but regardless, the blood stain goes like all the way down to the hem of her skirt.
Who did that?
She sort of draws in a breath and looks up, blinking a few times, and sees you and says, "Huh. I believe that it was done because of Celiand, but the hand that caused it directly was Cirith's. He did not seem holy himself."
How bad is it?
What can we do?
She gives a pained and shaky laugh and says, "It is quite bad. I have come because I think what you can do is siphon off as much of my power as you can, so that it does not go to waste or get misallocated to people that we might not want it to."
Apatia, where's Alona?
Apatia blinks and says, "I think she's back at the nightcap," and then immediately sprints off at her superhuman rate in the direction of the nightcap.
If you don't mind the gentlest of retcons, from the moment she started talking, I've slowed the bleeding as best I can by way
Certainly.
of Ghost Miracle.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm afraid that siphoning is going to be a last resort.
It is probably time for last resorts. I am quite tough by mortal standards, even by Nobilis standards, but the wound is not the whole of the problem.
What is the whole of the problem?
The wound to my body is significant, especially as I am not enchancelled. But there has also been a wounding of my spirit stuff to go along with it. That has no biological mechanisms with which it may be repaired. I am quite literally coming apart at the seams.
What was done?
Well, I agreed to speak to Sirtha after the last encounter we had. I thought perhaps he had been convinced by Celian's perfidy to at least hear us out, was aware of the danger, and attempted to take precautions, but he seemed to have received some sort of assistance, perhaps? It is unclear, and it happened very fast. I do not know if it was a weapon or a miracle, but in a very short moment that my back was turned, I found myself, body and soul, riven through with... And she looks down at the hole in her chest. Well, you can see the result. She gives a sort of a shaky
I can see
laugh.
the result. I don't understand what was done to your spirit stuff.
The best I can explain it, I was stabbed in the soul.
Murder, or an attempted murder, then.
Yeah, I will,
This does seem like your purview.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
hopefully...
I don't have enough to be able to, look it up for free, basically.
How much do you need?
It would be 1 miracle point, I believe. Correct, Adam?
You can do lesser creations for free, lesser destructions for 1 miracle point. 1 domain.
What about divinations?
Yeah, divinations are the operative.
Divinations, lesser divinations for 2, so that's free. Major divinations for 1. That is to say, for 1
Right.
miracle point.
Right, so yes, I would need a miracle point in order
Indeed.
to be able to accomplish those.
Can I open a conduit so I can borrow one of mine?
Or me.
Well,
I think I might be better supplied.
You might
than
be more flush than we are, because I'm at
Yeah.
2 in all but realm right now.
I'm full up on domain at the moment.
There
so
have
I'm
been
yeah.
times when that has been possible, but you've had your imperators to help you do it. You are no longer in your chancel currently. So there is no obvious method for transferring this power currently.
Dosk.
I will ask Fewa if I can take a modicum of her power to discern what was done here.
She sort of releases a shaky breath and she says, I do not know that I have any to spare. And I think that it is likely that Celian found some technique or weapon among the imperators she's hunted that allowed her to cause this, in much the same way that you can create a murder and designate or simply draw in a murderer. I think perhaps this was a similar use of betrayal, or maybe one of her other estates, or combination of them. It could very well have been an artifact created by one of the imperators she's managed to defeat. She sort of leans back fully against the bottom of the foundations of the statue that has been destroyed, and she says, it is unfortunate, but it is also okay. She gives a slightly blood-stained manic grin and says, if I fall here, and it seems that I shall, well, she or Sirtha or both do not seem to have realized what Puff is. I will be gone for some time, though.
I move forward to hold her hand. What is Puff, and what of Toeheel?
Tohil should be well. He was collecting information for me back near his home. He should be there for some time and then return. I think he is perhaps beneath Celian's notice, and if not, he is very good at avoiding direct danger when not ordered into combat like his previous Imperator did. Puff is a part of my essence. If this, and she weakly gestures to herself, should perish, I should be able to resume my immaterial form using Puff as a nucleus. It won't be quick.
But you'll be okay.
As Sventis.
And our siphoning won't hinder that process.
No, I will lose some amount of power from this regardless. What remains, my shards, my spirit body, will slowly drift to Puff and reconstitute, but it will be lesser than it was. So anything that you can take is otherwise going to waste, or perhaps even if I know Celian, simply going to be nettled away.
We can't let that happen. You'll remember us as Ventis, right?
I cannot say. This has not happened before.
Will Puff remember us?
I hope so. She gives sort of a weak smile.
Do you think, if you feel any about this at all, that you might recognize at least your own rage down the line? Or power signature? Is there anything...
Through labored breathing, she says, anything is possible. Again, even imperators have something of an undiscovered country.
I just don't want you to forget, because I'm not going to forget you.
She weakly shrugs one shoulder and says, I hope not to. But what will be, will be. At this point, Apatia comes pelting back into the square with Ilona in like a Princess Carrie, jostling a little bit, and carefully but rapidly dumps Ilona on her feet in front of Feywa, and Ilona takes one look at her and sort of like gasps and kind of starts fussing and muttering about how incredibly unlikely it is that she is conscious or alive.
I bring Apatia up to speed while Ilona mutters.
I will offer the offhanded comment to Ilona. Congratulations, you're now a physician to the gods.
Ilona laughs shakily as she attempts to inspect, clean, and figure out what can be done with this hole in Feywa's chest. The sunlight coming through the canopy has started to dim somewhat, and the wind, while hot and desert, has started to die down.
How do we take your power?
Well, I give it freely, so hopefully it will not be hard. You should not need to nettle me, and the red tooth right will do you no good here. Fortunately, I know that is... Well,
that wasn't going to be an option.
My heart is quite damaged anyway. I think that... I think that touch and intent and the prayers you might give to me and to Dusk are as good a mechanism as any.
I reach up and push Mavia's helm back so that at least my face is fully visible.
Mm-hmm.
Surprising no one, I'm crying.
Indeed.
And I kind of tied my grip and say, well, are you ready?
She starts to nod and then seems to have a thought and hesitantly reaches into one of the pouches under her cloak at her belt, pulls it off her belt, and holds it kind of shakily out in Mavia's direction.
I extend out my free hand without letting hers go.
Sure. Picking it up, it has quite a bit of heft to it for its size. And she says, I think you'll be most able to make use of it. And then she takes as deep a breath as she can and says, I'm ready. Any more delay will only serve to make it more difficult. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been
I'm sorry.
a great honor to have known you.
Go ahead.
I commend your death and your memory to Dosk.
She nods solemnly and, sort of tries to hold her other hand out and lean her head forward so that she can be, sort of accessed by the Nobilis present. Apatia looks indecisive off to one side, and Ilona sort of moves back, shaking her head, looking a little pale, even for her.
I encourage Apatia and say to Feywa, when we meet again, whatever that means and whatever that looks like, may we like each other just as much and may things come out differently.
If you can, of course. We would obviously love to hear what occurs in the undiscovered country. But be safe even there.
She nods silently and sort of slumps a little bit forward. And excuse me.
If you're ready to
Way
say...
to method act, Adam.
With a cough.
COVID is a sort of stab in the soul. Yeah, so this is all very method.
As soon as I see her slump forward, I do my best to keep her upright with a gentle embrace.
Mm-hmm. You feel you haven't really consciously registered it because you're very used to it under these circumstances, but you've been feeling sort of the friction of all of the Octoritoses, sort of clumped in this area, and the sort of frequency of this vibration changes as Feywa's Octoritas fades. Metaphysically, you can perceive as her Octoritas fades sort of her spirit flare. It is significant. Which is also a bit of a clue here, because whatever was done to her would have had to get through that strong Octoritas.
Mm-hmm.
But it is not hard, specifically for Leorian, to see the small siphon figuratively as though a silver cord of astral projection leading off into parts unknown that you assume to be the conduit of the nettlewright being performed on Feywa.
Freaking stop it.
Can I murder that conduit?
If Leorian points it out to you, you may try.
I most certainly do point it out.
I figured as much. So...
Can I nettle the nettle? Can I Uno reverse?
I'm
Actually,
trying to figure out what the sort of like basis of a nettle here would be, right? Because it is something targeted at the person. and their estates and how you have
we are
subverted
preventing
them.
a betrayal.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that that's the case.
We are utilizing a betrayal to our advantage. The betrayal happened when she turned her back on Cirtha.
Yeah. I mean, go ahead and crush the nettle, and I will roll a die for it.
We have an abundance, so
yeah,
I am absolutely...
There's no reason not to crush a nettle.
A big stack of nettles in inventory is not among our concerns. Yeah, that's
indeed,
fine.
Yeah. Ramnet,
we definitely have saved those up.
If anything, I just want it to be a not so subtle middle finger in Cillian's direction.
Sure. Ramnet, you were saying you were trying to sever this. In what manner are you attempting to do this?
I would like to use the power within the conduit to sever the conduit, because I don't have any of my own at the moment.
Sure. Miraculously speaking, what is the basis for this action? Like, your domain here of murder, how are you using it?
I'm destroying it. It's not a murder anymore.
Lesser destructions are level 5, which costs you 1 domain miracle point. I don't think you can afford that currently.
Failing that...
Which was part of why I was trying to use the power of the conduit.
Sure. I think that the miracle has to come first there, is the problem.
Yep.
Can I
have one...
penetrate, like... I don't think... I'll let you decide this, but my thinking is that her power is the one being siphoned away.
Mm-hmm.
I can manage a pretty significant destruction or creation, like a lesser creation or lesser destruction for free.
Sure.
So my thinking is I want to make the spiritual power of Ventis angry that it is in some way going to benefit her betrayer.
Okay.
And see if that can stymie the flow.
What sort of penetration are you putting on that?
Do I feel an Octoritas on the nettle itself? Or...
It is, at the very least, connected to an Octoritas, though probably does not have the full force of that Octoritas.
Is there a point where it seems to stop? I'm actually, you know what? I'm not even going to worry about it. I, in this moment, am going to use my remaining 2.
Okay.
And maybe, I don't know when the last time I did Rite of the Last Trump was, so I can't speak to that. But if I have the option to,
sure.
I can throw in a 3rd.
Yeah, I'll let you have that option if you wish to do it.
Okay.
Okay, so Mavia crushes the nettle and attempts to balk the conduit. These sort of prayers and laying on of hands all sort of take place. You can sense Apatia doing something that it quickly becomes clear is essentially destroying the sensation of racking pain in Fewa as well. And you offer up prayers to Fewa and to Dusk, and Fewa sort of breathes a little raggedly for a moment and then lets out a last breath and stops. So, here is what I would like for everyone to do. I would like you to roll 1d10 for each point you have in spirit, plus every spirit miracle point you wish to put into this. So if you have 2 spirit and 2 spirit miracle points that you feel like spending, you could roll 4d10. We'll add those up, and you can distribute that many miracle points into your temporary miracle point list.
Oh. Wait, what? Can I get that one more time? We're rolling
So,
d10s matching our number of spirit and any miracle points that we wish to spend, and then we're going to add them up?
Spirit miracle points specifically.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yes, you will add them up. So my example was if you have 2 spirit and you spend 2 spirit miracle points, that's 4d10. You're going to add all them up, and then you can distribute that many miracle points among your meters.
Okay.
If only I had spirit miracle points to spend.
Indeed.
Oh, come back here. Oh, I'm not mad at you after all. So I have 14 and 8. So 22.
Rolled a
Excellent.
pair of 9s.
18.
I think given the nature of this, if I'm understanding it correctly, spending a lot of spirit miracle points, I'm very likely to get back more than I put in.
You are never
Guaranteed.
going to do worse than break even.
Right.
Mhm.
Therefore, I'm about to roll 10d10.
By all means.
Let me get this sound on the...
There you go. Juice it.
All right, give me a sec.
Yeah, it'll take a second. Go ahead. I should cut in some abacus sounds here.
Yeah, math is hard.
Let's go shopping.
The total is 38.
38. Amazing.
That's awesome.
The Nettlewright that we attempted to do on the Nettlewright was 1 die that I rolled. And everyone will get 5 additional miracle points to distribute as they wish from that. So
You have so many miracle points, Drew.
indeed. I'm sure this will take a moment, so I will marker and let us do that.
I just now added all of my the points from my roll.
Mm-hmm. And you have 5 more.
You said 5 additional ones, so I
5
have
additional
43
ones.
total.
43 total. Yeah.
All right.
Just
Yeah,
still
if
not
ever
enough
we've-
to max everything out from 0, but
No.
maybe enough for you to max everything out from where you were.
Mm-hmm.
Although the 6 in spirit, right, are also ones that need to be replenished from that because you spent those.
Right, true.
I am
So yeah, so
going to
actually
kind of
37.
move
distributed.
stuff around additionally from where I initially had it, because initially I thought that I was not able to go over my limit, but now I think I am.
Your limit?
Like the cap that I usually have for refills.
15 is the maximum miracle points that you can have in any particular
Yeah.
pool.
So the cap that my character usually has is not the limit here. So I am going to really put a lot in my domain.
Those do tend to be quite useful, yes.
My domain's maxed and I have 20 left to distribute. And I've refilled everything that needed to be refilled. So I'm having fun.
There we go. Because I don't mind being a little short on realm
Mm-hmm.
if I have a ton in domain.
Yeah, do we think spirit or aspect would be more handy going forward? Table talk.
That's a great. I'm just going to split the difference. You know what? I'm going to put 6 in one and 6 in the other and call it a day.
And I was going to say, rules-wise, so far in the campaign, Spirit has come up mostly in dealing with reading and interacting with Auctoritas's and doing sort of like insight into other divines. Aspect has potential to be very powerful in open conflict if you have enough miracle points for it.
I'm going to leave my points still for that reason, come to think of it, because for me, yeah, juicing her up is pretty important.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I have some power, is the Nettle Channel still going?
It has dried up.
Cool.
It appears that whatever power it was able to take, it has taken. And you all have taken the power that you could. And there is simply no more to be done.
Do I get the sense that my miracle did anything to slow the flow, or at least prevent some of it from being taken.
Maybe. I mean, you got some power, right, from your nettle, so presumably that's power that Celiand or Cirtha or whoever didn't get.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because I of course could have played the drum to try and stop it, but then I wouldn't have been any good with the actual siphoning, which was the more important part. So I think we came out okay.
Yeah, we did.
You certainly came out more okay than most. I suppose
Yeah,
a quick
that's fair.
summary is
Well,
in
sure.
order here.
Yeah, we should probably say this. We said it during the math break, but we should say let it be entered into the record that I'm currently sitting pretty at 15 miracle points in aspect, domain, and spirit, and 12 in realm. So yeah, I have no complaints.
Right.
I hope everyone else feels all right.
So in aspect I have 7, and domain I have 13, which is fun because I can do a level 10 miracle and still have ample left over. And then realm 4, spirit 5.
I have capped out domain, and, well, I have not capped out the others.
Indeed. That's 5 aspect, 1 realm, and 3 spirit for the curious for Romnet. So yeah, a fairly decent haul, I would say.
That feels somehow insensitive.
It was sort of intended to be a little
Yeah.
bit cavalier.
God Death Hall.
Because
Let's review everything we got, guys.
Yeah, the loot screen does feel really, really gauche in this context.
an
but
unboxing
it,
where you
it
just
is
pry
Yeah.
open her
Unboxing.
ribcage.
Oh my gosh!
I mean, it was pre-unboxed for us in that case.
Yeah,
That's
we avoided that. Yeah, the Red Tooth Right unboxing video. I mean,
Soon.
too soon. I mean, it is literally not just what she would have wanted, but what she told us she wanted seconds ago. So it's,
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Full
So-
consent.
Moving back into the sort of physical space here, you sort of pull your senses back to the physical, and you can see Feywa looking still and gaunt, kind of sprawled on this pedestal. Everybody sort of slowly straightens up. Apatia's starry eyes are kind of twinkling and swirling, and she looks a little bit vague and far away. The plaza is mostly empty, as Fermatans are not super comfortable in the sunlight, but currently the sunlight is rapidly dying off and returning Fermata to its pre-dawn gloom, enhanced by the thick canopy and general nature of the place.
Still holding on to Feywa, I pray to Toheal.
What do you say?
Feywa's gone. Ventis will reform around Puff as a nucleus. If you are not okay, you know how to reach us.
Faintly, after a moment or two, you do hear back from Toheal. He says, "Yes, I've felt her go somewhere. I will continue my assignment and attempt to locate Puff when I've finished. Thank you. I
I'm
don't
sorry.
know how much use I will be going forward in the near term, and I appreciate it. This has been a eventful and not terribly pleasant span, but I suppose that is true for all of us."
Muse aside, you're still important to all of us. So let us know if we can be of any help.
That is appreciated. I am remote enough that I doubt there will be anything you can do, but I will be sure to alert you if I can. I must attend to the tasks at hand now, but I am glad to have an open channel. At least until someone attempts to interfere, we should be able to speak relatively freely this way.
That is comforting to know.
You get the sense of sort of a decisive nod, and then his attention fades, and he goes back to whatever it is he's been in the middle of.
Hashtag just God things.
Demigod business.
All right. So, as the sunlight fades, the wind dies down, the desert wind anyway, and the sea wind reasserts itself. Rain begins to spit again. And you stand in a mostly deserted square. They were laying in front of you, everyone mostly silent to all outward appearances.
She's not laying in front of us. I held on to her.
Oh, indeed. Thank you. You also have in your other hand the pouch that she gave you.
You have bloodstone to forge.
Yeah, I suspect as much. I put it on my belt for the time being because it feels disrespectful to open it while I'm still holding on to her. And I pick her up, rising to my feet and allowing the last vestiges of Mavia to fall off of me. Except for the fact that they don't. The shadows go away, but there's a weird after image, kind of reminiscent of staring into the sun that Ventis has just... The sun of Ventis that just vanished from our sky. Just a permanent after image of the Vanta black tendrils and helm and armor. I never asked how she wanted to be buried.
Apatia sort of looks at everybody in turn and murmurs. We tend to cremate people back in Demacor. But I don't know what the Caroline Wastes do.
With a lore of 0 and a knowledge of 1, I certainly don't know what they do in the Caroline Wastes.
I mean, I could roll a lore of 6 to see.
Give it a try if you want.
Was Thoralda from the Caroline Wastes? Because I know Sharif had something to say about how they preferred to be.
Thoralda was from beyond the Caroline
Beyond the
Wastes,
Wastes,
which is where Tohil is now.
Okay.
Fittingly, oddly, 666.
Nice.
Marvelous. You cast about for a minute, and reports from the Caroline Wastes are always a little bit dicey in Taraxis. But you are able to sort of catalog that, you've heard about one thing more than most, which is that important people in the societies of the Caroline Wastes are typically sort of ceremonially desiccated and then interred in the dunes. You're not entirely sure what this entails, as no account you've ever heard has gone into detail. But it is a form of burial.
Yep.
I take it you relay that to the rest of us?
Yeah.
Well,
we probably can't perform that to the letter, but we could probably do something passable,
I'm sure
respectful.
We can find a dune, because those tended to follow her, much to... Well, I'm sure we can
I
find a
mean,
dune.
there's the space that resulted in Bor. It would seem fitting.
I like that idea. Where we lack in knowledge, we can make up for in intent.
Seems to summarize a great deal of our goings-on.
Too many.
It does it that. Well, I suppose we need to figure out how to convey ourselves and her there. Table talk. How in fact do we do this? I mean, we know how to go from Bor to somewhere. Are we gonna sort of point jump to Bor and then try to go to there? I mean, I don't know that we have like a direct teleport at our disposal.
I think that is the soundest way of going about it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Then I think we're trying to, the lot of us, at least those of us divine who are present, head to Bor.
All right. With all of your, sort of connection, Nobilis to Imperator to Dusk, and Romnet's world walking abilities, it is relatively simple to exit Fermata and find the nearest way into Bor, whereupon you are on the windswept, sort of high plains. And then you are going to attempt to step back out in the vicinity of the desertified vales.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Again, simple enough as it goes. You find yourselves actually perched on the precipice of where Reorienting was. Interestingly, it has changed from the last time you have seen it. With Fewa fallen, much of the land around this, I hesitate to call it a sinkhole because it does not have that kind of bowl shape, is relatively stark and steep and a little jagged where it has fallen. Everything around it seems to have reverted to relatively standard vales, grassland with sort of scattered copses of forest where the sort of water gathers in between heights. But this depression in the landscape, about the size of a town, still has sand dunes and the wreckage of buildings at the bottom of it.
So we head to where the dunes are.
Okay. It is a bit of an ordeal to climb down, but you are all equal to the task and just kind of hand wave it. But it takes a minute, especially carrying your cargo. And, you find a spot where not only is it sandy, but the lips of the descent do not manage to fully block the rays of the sun.
I do a lesser creation of fury to make the little spirits I know that are occupying the sand angry that they must serve this purpose, but also kind of a fury that makes them move aside to make the burial a bit more expeditious.
Sure, the sand in front of you boils a bit, but does eventually sort of open into an aperture in the side of the dune, more than large enough to fit Fewa. She's not very big.
I set her down and pull a necklace off of myself and gently fasten it around her neck and say it's fitting that you shall lay to rest, Ventis, or at least this aspect of you with family. I step back so the others can also pay their respects.
I get 2 paces closer, drop down, and without saying a word, I start playing. What comes to my head is probably something I've never played before, but the drive that moves me to start is that it should be something elemental, something of the deep earth, and something long but ephemeral, even so.
I will put a hand to the sand now covering her and state that we will wait her return, and further, in the meantime, I will do my best to make sure that her murder does not go unresolved, as it is within my purview.
While Leorian is playing, while these reverences are being observed, Apatia hangs back. Once the sand has been piled atop Ventis, yes?
I would do that with a lesser destruction of fury.
Mm-hmm.
Filling the sand with hopefully despair and the absence of fury.
It sloughs back into place, covering Fewa rapidly. Once this has been done, Apatia silently steps forward and sort of looks down. Her expression is kind of hard to read, not least because ain't got no eyes. But she...
Excuse me?
Oh, Adam. You have such a way with words.
More currently than I do when healthy and unmedicated, I'm sure. But she regards the increasingly anonymous patch of sand intently for a long 2 moments, and then pulls the meat of her thumb up to her mouth and just tears into it, clenching her hand and dribbling some blood onto the sand. And she just sort of shakes her hand and seems to pull it into her wreathing cloths and steps back, blinking a couple times and then looking around. Unless anybody breaks it, there is a long moment of silence and sort of the sound of wind coming across the plains and encountering this deformation of the terrain. And then Lissa...
Even if someone were to approach, there would be silence a moment longer. I make sure that it lingers.
Lissa, you hear with what comes to you to be your anchor and prayer senses after a moment, Kaya's voice. She sort of doesn't have the lexicon of testing, but you kind of get that, hello,
Are you there, Lissa?
I mean,
it's
sorry.
me, Kaya.
Lissa, I woke up and you were gone. Is everything all right?
We lost an ally. Sorry to leave you like that. We had to go and lay her to rest.
No, of course. That makes perfect sense. I am a little groggy, I'm afraid. I will leave you to it and try to hold things down here in Fermata unless you have other assignments for me. It's, well, if it isn't inappropriate to say so, it's nice to be able to talk like this at a distance.
It's nice to hear your voice right now.
You
And
can feel her smile.
You keep an eye on everyone at Fermata.
I shall.
I have some rage to unleash.
She chuckles a little nervously and says, well, I'd certainly hate to be whoever was on the receiving end. Best of luck, and I'm at your service. There's a little bit of a wink in the statement.
And I yours.
Till then. And she is withdrawn.
When Lissa comes back to herself, I'm on my feet and looking in her direction, and I say, you were somewhere else with someone else there? I didn't want to interrupt.
Okay, I was making sure everything was okay. And as I'm saying that, I'm pulling the pouch back off my belt to look at its contents, which I have a pretty fair idea of what they might be.
It is the hilt of Feywa's bloodstone needle that she uses. It is very sort of basic and solid, small for her relatively small grip, and the heft is considerable as she uses it. It extends and doesn't change shape freely, but forms itself to the purpose.
So it's looking at it with the sight. What do I see?
Well, bloodstone. You see the metal in the shape that your physical sight sees it, and you see not so much any sort of miraculous energy or Arctoritas as just the residue of the spirit stuff imperators are made of. It would appear that whatever Feywa did to this, the source of it was her when she was using it. The way that she used it was her manipulating it.
Addressing the hilt. Because this is what I do.
Sure.
I hold it and do just a lesser creation of fury and ask the hilt to adopt whatever form it sees fit that could take vengeance and destroy a god.
Okay. It stays the shape that it is, but not because your miracle is ineffective. It seems to have followed your instructions. It is, however, not terribly communicative.
I turn to Leorin and Romnut, and in case it wasn't obvious by me having a literal conversation with the hilt, tell them that I feel like it did what it was ought to, but I'm not sure what is a weapon without a blade. It is a hammer without its head.
It's possible, I suppose, that you're the blade.
Then what say you to destroying Cillian? For to destroy a throne, I suspect we'll need all the power we can get, and I will not abide by her thinking she has a chance at it.
I misspoke. We're the blade. As to destroying Cillian, I'm enthusiastic about the idea.
It is within my purview.
Before we go, though, Lissa, I'm with you to the end, of course. And I don't mean to make this harder. Where we are, did you want to say a few words, not just for Feywa, but for Reorienting? And if that time has passed, then ignore me. But you're so ready to take on the very cosmos, and again, so am I, but I just wanted to make sure you know that someone's thinking of you as well.
I appreciate that. But I'm not sure if words are what Reorienting needs right now so much as action.
Action, then. I think we're proving fairly good at that. Let's begin.
Efficient, even.
While you have been talking, Apatia has turned to look directly at the sun and sort of raised her hand in the direction of the sun. And she doesn't attempt to put this miracle through anyone's auctoritas, but around her, given her power over the senses, she bends the light and creates essentially an illusion of a sort of bright violet nighttime, stars swirling in the area, and it sounds as though right around her, in the area in which this illusion takes effect, the very ground beneath you sort of bellows its anger. She slowly lowers her hand, the illusion dispelling. She turns with a serious look on her face, and she says, "If we continue like this, I think we will see more in this vein. I am unwilling to do so. I have enjoyed being here, helping, and I hope to come back and do the same, but currently, Dimakor is directionless, just full of people who have lost their goddess, and I think I can be more use bringing them into our fold. I will ask Rimalus and Philia to help me get there with all haste, and if all goes well, I will bring worshippers power and a decisive advantage if I can when I return. I fear, done too little to contribute to the end of the war compared to what I could have been doing, though I don't regret time spent." She gives sort of a firm nod. She says, "I am known in Dimakor and fairly well liked. In Nyx's absence, I think I can do good work there."
I have believed in no gods and no mortals quite as much as I believe in you, Apatia. I think they will find that faith as well. Just stay in touch.
She gives a decisive nod. She says, I will do my best. And then her face breaks into one of her threateningly predatory grins. And she says, your faith in me means a lot, and I will do my best to live up to it. She gives
You already have.
a sort of formal looking salute, though her grin doesn't falter, undercutting it somewhat. And she sort of starts the process of bounding out of the bottom of this cave-in to where you had arrived from Boar.
I watch after her.
Yeah, you watch as she achieves the top and uses the path you took here to head back to Boar, and then presumably to Fermata so that she can speak to Romulus and Philia. The three of you are, until you say otherwise, still in the sort of bottom of this collapse. If anybody is doing or saying anything while Apatia is departing, now is the time to let me know. All right. As Apatia steps from the physical world into Boar, there is a beat or two of silence and reflection. And then, Reorienting, you receive a somewhat frantic prayer from Timos. I'm trying to remember the voice I gave him, and I'm not going to be able to do voices incredibly well anyway because of my allergy. But you hear Timos do the... I almost hate to say this because I have really always detested Seinfeld, but basically the beginning of this prayer is Kramer bursting in through the door.
Sure. No, a preamble-less beginning. Yeah.
And he is almost, it feels like mid-statement, but you can make sense of it. He says, I don't know if you'll be able to help, but something is very wrong. I can no longer leave the estate. It's not locked. It just doesn't seem to connect to the rest of the city anymore, and there isn't any light here, and, well, you were the only person I need to turn to. Please help.
I steel myself, and I say, your prayer shall be answered. More importantly, we'll be there post-haste.
Oh, thank you. Father is acting oddly. He's sequestered himself and doesn't seem to be responding to everything happening. I will await your arrival, my lord? He makes it into a question mark.
I allow myself a moment to see if I'm still pleased by that and realize I possibly don't care, and say, my lord will be there as soon as we possibly can be. So I explained to the others that it seems that darkness has come to Calavan. Timos got in touch directly, and it seems that Tyrios has become something of a recluse. Things seem strange, so that's, I suppose, understandable. But, well, if we're looking for a place to engage in action, this may be a very good one indeed.
I agree, but doesn't it But doesn't it all kind of feel like a smokescreen? Like she's trying to keep us busy?
Mm-hmm.
That hadn't occurred to me, but yes, very much like a smokescreen.
And I fear for Tyrius because we heard that Cirtha wasn't acting like himself.
Remind me to consult you before I answer prayers in the future.
No, that's not necessary. I am viewing everything through, let's say, a rather specific perspective.
Well, if the aim is to distract us, then what from?
That is the question, isn't it? It seems that she has some sort of godly murder weapon, which is the only reasonable explanation as to why she managed to cut through so many so quickly. I give a questioning glance to the hilt in my hand.
I would like to do a major divination of murder.
Thank you.
All right. A major divination of murder is... Where did I put my thing here? Going to be 1 miracle point for you. What is your question / inquiry?
What is the means by which Sealand is accomplishing her divine murders?
Okay, and are you putting any penetration on this?
No, because that will be telling itself.
Okay. Let's see. The
Wish
answers...
I had 1 more divine XP so I could actually be, regent.
One day.
Maybe.
As is the way of these things, you get more of a sense and a knowledge, but to put it in words, which is what we have to do for podcasts, the sense that you get is how to phrase this? Predation.
Like a predator. Tooth and fang is the means, in a manner of speaking. I'm assuming Gromnet conveyed that. Therefore, I respond to it in some way.
I am trying to make sense of the disconnect between question and answer here. And I will convey the question, the answer, and the gap.
What? I don't understand the gap.
I asked about tools, and I was given characterization.
Seems that they might be one and the same. That she somehow got her hands on the imperator of predation.
That still doesn't explain the means by which she produced a hole in Fewa's chest, or how she did for Nyx or Mott or any of the others.
No, I think I see where she's going with this. If you were to create a murder, then the murder weapon would be murder. Or at least it would be if you did it yourself, directly. So you mean that if there's a one of us, but of predation, then That's murderer and murder weapon both.
Possibly, kind of like, since we're here, Puff and Toe Heel.
I picture whatever force was going to answer Dez's second question, like waiting to get a word in edgewise as we say this.
I mean, I don't have a second question.
Okay. Yeah, I thought you were asking after the disconnect. That
No.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay. Gotcha.
I am.
So, remind me how real miracles work again. I know we're not currently in Boar, but
sure. Within your chancel, realm miracles can do anything that a domain miracle can do, but of any domain.
So
limited to the realm.
Indeed.
Yeah, limited to being inside of it, but Boar is pretty accessible. I looked to Leorian. What if we went to Boar and asked if there was an imperator of predation? I mean, I feel the strength to be able to pull that off, though only barely. You have a certain glow about you that makes me suspect that you might be a little better off.
I also think that this may be beyond the limits of a realm miracle because there's
it has to be within the realm.
Imperator of predation in Boar.
Okay, darn.
In answer to your other point, though, I feel a flame. I'm tempted to say literally, but we don't really work in the literal anymore. Yes, I think I can do something, if not that. I pray to Dusk, and I say, I'm not sure, given that you're trying to keep a low profile and all, whether you're aware of the full dramatis personae, but we have a suspicion that there may be a Nobilis of perdition. Can you confirm or deny?
There's a couple of beats, and then you hear Dosk's voice with a sort of, distorted layer in it as well, come back and say, I mean, I remember Fewa mentioning something of the sort. The name escapes me, but far, far off. An imperator had something, an estate, something like that. The hunt, or predators, or predation, or something to that. If Celian had gotten the better of that imperator, then yeah, that might explain a lot.
It might. Okay, thank you. Prayer over and prayer out, and thank you.
For what it's worth, that is something that had come up. It's just been a while in both real time and for your characters in the game, and that there was very little information available about it.
This is table talk that I'm throwing us into, but
us table talk.
Yeah, right.
Go ahead.
Could never do that. Never. So major divinations are free for me. And it strikes me that their predation is a furious act. So
it could
I can ask a specific question about who would oversee the fury as it relates specifically to predation. The matter would be just if it's worth the penetration to get that information.
I also will just say I think that the relationship is there, but not super solid, which may affect the quality of the information you get just overall.
Yeah, I don't know that a spider's predation is inherently furious.
No, the spider's not, but when you get to mammals and other species, there's definitely a cooldown period after the kill.
Us monkeys tend to get pretty exercised about the whole thing. That's
Like I
especially
said,
true.
the connection is there. It may not be the most solid of connections.
And so, even a ephemeral connection might get us some useful information. So I'll just do it without penetration.
As you're contemplating this, I throw in that Wildosk seemed to think that this particular demigod is from somewhere far away and maybe was claimed. So
maybe that's what
helpful.
Tohil's looking into.
One could hope.
In any case, I still perform it. No
Sure.
penetration.
No penetration, and give me the question as it's phrased one more time.
Yeah, that requires me to remember how I phrased it.
Feel free to revise it if you wish to.
Well, I think I was...
Now's the time to lock it in.
You know, I was cognizant of keeping it specific to fury as it relates to predation.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, not, in theory anyway, painting predation as inherently furious, but asking about the specific fury, who is in control of fury as it relates to predation.
Mm-hmm. You feel the sort of record scratch texture of your divination being thwarted by an Octoritas.
Do I get a sense of its scale from the record scratch?
I mean, you didn't put any penetration on it, but it feels solid.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can confirm that there is, in fact, a demigod of predation or the hunt with a solid Octoritas.
Well, I suppose what's bothering me is that, well, which is the smoke screen and which is the thing being screened, right? I mean, if the goal is to kill the gods before we can siphon their power, become unkillable, well, Feywa, I mean, is divine, but why go after the Calivan family? I mean, they're powerful in a mortal sense, but is this now pure distraction, or is there some reason to prey on them?
But we also had Brother Umber and the things emerging from the canals. I think
That's
the goal
true.
is to keep us scurrying.
Busy. Yes.
That's a
Scurry,
way to
scurry.
keep us expending ourselves and our energy on miracles against these threats.
You're right, of course.
If we walk into this, we can assume that it's either a distraction or an attempt at predation.
Well, what do we know of Celian's domains? We know she has beauty, truth, betrayal. She's taken sacrifice back.
Darkness, presumably.
Yeah.
The Forge, I hope.
I mean, the version of Brother Umber that you fought recently in the plaza had mastery over darkness, madness, revelry, shards of Mott
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
that did not stick around when he fell.
Yeah, it does seem to me like she has the ability to kind of,
Puppet.
puppet move shards like pieces on whatever the equivalent of a chessboard would be in this universe.
The world.
I don't know if we will. Sure, yeah. In this universe and ours.
This world, instead of chess or checkers, plays Go Soccer from Nichijou. Look up a clip. Maybe I'll try to put one in the show notes.
It's canon now. It's canon.
Please don't sue us for copyright infringement.
Perhaps we take the bait knowing it is such. But it seems to me that if I were continuing to distract, the next step would be to go after an ally or Dusk himself.
This ability to puppet, as you say, puts us at a distinct disadvantage. We can't chip away at the Lady Celian's power, whereas
the only thing we can, like, a unifying theme of sacrifice and beauty and truth and betrayal is that there's no subverting them directly. Changing beauty standards, there remain beauty standards. You know, by playing in that sandbox, the archetype still holds primacy. You know, even lies don't really detract from the truth.
They reinforce it, I suppose,
Exactly.
in a sense.
I could buy us time by meddling predation. I mean, what have I done from the very beginning but make swamp creatures angry and force them to attack? If we act unexpectedly, it'll also show our knowledge and make us more of a threat, but
We're already a threat.
clearly
Probably one somewhat discounted at this point.
discounted, but still worth a degree of attention.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so we take the bait, we bite down on the hook, but not fully, knowing that it is a hook. Then what? What won't she be expecting? The nettle is not a bad thought.
Yeah, it's hard to say where that shard is, but it strikes me as hard to pull off a predation if it's already injured. Is it possible to it is possible to murder a predator, I suppose, but
Indeed, are murder and predation opposed? I mean, predators eat their prey. Murderers, stipulated they could, but they generally don't. They're victims.
Yeah.
There's still predation going on. It can be hunting. There's overlap.
It can be furious, but it needn't be. Is that the problem we're running into? That there's too much overlap, that we can't undermine. Too much metaphor. I feel lost in it.
The thing we had previously discussed about betrayal is that to nettle betrayal would require turning betrayal back upon itself.
Overcoming the Octoritas and making her the subject? The hunted?
No, conceptually. The betrayal must undermine the betrayer somehow.
Self-betrayal. Or, no, not that. Betrayal launched back at its source. I'm lost in metaphor again, I think.
Functionally, what we need is a betrayal that undermines the interests of the one doing the betraying. Correct me if I'm wrong in that conception, Adam. We had previously discussed it, but I don't perfectly remember it.
That sounds to me like a way of subverting betrayal, yes.
And what would it look like with this scenario with this baited hook we're being offered?
Well, if old Tyrios Calavan is not feeling himself, do we know what that entails? I mean, is he enthralled? Could he be turned against our enemy? Or is thinking that that's possible the hook?
I think the hook is whatever events are planned there. And possibly him as an agent, possibly someone else. We don't know.
The hook is fixing the problem, I suspect.
Sure.
Not necessarily knowing that Tyrios might be an agent of betrayal.
Tyrios might be an agent of betrayal. I hate to say it, but Timos might be an agent of betrayal. There are many possible agents.
Sure. Look, I don't want
the situation we need to organize here is the betrayal happens and does not benefit the betrayer.
As a mechanical note that need not have bearing on your particular conversation, it is certainly possible that Timos has been miraculously affected by the estate of betrayal. It is worth noting that anchors are protected from hostile miracles by their Nobilis' Auctoritas, and if I'm correct, Leorian, yours is fairly high. So that doesn't mean that it didn't happen, but as a consideration, I just thought I would remind us of that.
Not just to pull it off, but to sneak it by me would have taken a significant...
It would have taken some effort.
Of power. Yeah.
Which, again, doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Sure. Well, he's connected to me, and, I mean, my card's firmly upon the table. He's a person who I'd prefer not to die.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure he feels the same about his father. Reasonably sure. But you're right, of course. He grew up rich and powerful. Betrayal was never far from being at hand.
An easy target, then. I wonder, so do I destroy his fury?
What we have to do is we have to go there and assess and be prepared to act quickly, decisively, and on our feet in the heat of the moment. It's far from ideal.
But not far from our norm in terms of how we operate.
Certainly true.
Certainly true. Not unsuccessful so far, albeit with problems.
So, into the trap then, with an eye for turning the mechanism on its creator.
All right. So, would I be correct in assuming that the three of you return to Boar as a first step?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Stepping into Boar, you find yourself not on the windswept plain, but in the sketched out version.
Bless you. Bless you.
Apologies. In the sketched out version of the nightcap that serves as at least something close to the Chancellor's heart. You see the sort of absence in a person suggestion that is Dosk, head on the bar, sort of hands gripping his head. When he becomes aware of you, he sort of sits up. Oh, sorry. It's, as there are fewer of us, it's getting to be a full-time job to try and tune out the vacuum. It's getting worse. Everything okay?
No, unfortunately.
Yeah,
No is an
I
accurate,
thought that might be the
summary.
case. Well, is there anything I can do to help from here?
We're about to walk into a trap.
Oh,
Well, we have convinced ourselves that it is a trap, and we're walking into it anyway.
Yeah. At the very least, it's a distraction.
Likely, assuming, again, that Sealand has caused it.
She We have every reason to believe that she's the cause of the trouble, but we have no way to tell the trouble that, if subverted, would cause her trouble from the trouble just meant to trouble us.
Yeah, unless Mott has found a way of sending us trouble from wherever it
The
is.
undiscovered country.
Yes. I'd rather
That would be impressive.
Dosk sort of shakes his head a little bit, or the suggestion of a head, and says, that sounds complicated. Sorry, I'm not thinking so clearly right now, but well, fortunately, one of the things has been helping is the power from the folks you've set on the path of nothing has started to trickle in. I don't have a ton yet, but while you're here, I can lend some. Any particular areas of need, anything I can shore up for you?
would be, I suspect conflict lies ahead, and I kind of brandish Feywa's hilt. So any additional strength you can lend my mortal form or my domain would be appreciated.
Yeah, further power over my domain would obviously benefit.
Maybe defense of spirit, since I'm not as bright as I used to be.
Right. Let's see. And you can't see a face, but you get the sense with a slight incline of his head that he's closed his eyes. And the air in the heart of the chancel vibrates a little bit, and there is a sense of dramatic exertion. After which, Lissa and Romnet, you do feel your spirit reinforced. That's the word I was looking for. By 1 point on your stat line. So from 2 to 3 for both of you.
Nice.
And Dosk sort of sags and says, at least as long as the worship lasts, that strength should not lose you.
There's more coming, I suspect.
Well,
Acacia's gone to Demacor to rally those now without a god behind your cause.
He sort of slaps himself on the forehead and says, I wish I'd thought of that. That's a really good idea. The more the merrier, and it will help you, help me, and help me just be able to ignore the hungering vacuum above me. I hope everything goes well with springing this trap you identified. I don't know if I'm tracking the details very well, but it sounds dicey.
There are risks, but there's no way to avoid risk in dealing with Celiand.
That is true. Well, I don't want to delay you. I'm glad I could give you a little bit of help, and I'm only a prayer away, though.
Of course.
I hope to be returning to finer form soon.
For your part, I would not trust parlays, or indeed any sort of diplomatic overtures at the moment.
He nods. Yeah. Not great, but makes sense. All right.
Well, it's unclear whether Cirtha is acting under their own power. Feywa is diminished.
Yeah.
And it is unclear what the state of Dagon is. And adding Celiand, that may be a complete list.
He nods. Certainly possible, and not amazing. I'm safest here, but hopefully I can be of more service as we build momentum.
Shore up, because at some point we fear these distractions will be an attempt not just on our allies, but on you.
I do expect it's only a matter of time.
Stay strong and whole. I take
Insane.
out my lute and I play him a few bars of death metal.
He chuckles and claps you on the shoulder and says, "Thank you. Weirdly enough, that helped a fair bit."
Good. I'd ask for more power, but I'm a wineskin about to burst. Let's turn a trap on the trapper.
Put it to good use. And he sort of sits less distressed looking back on the bar stool as you sort of fade out of the surroundings and find yourselves just outside one of the gates of Calavan. Very quickly you notice that in the area where the Calavan estate is located, there is a dome of pure black covering the estate and maybe some of its environs.
What does it look like with the site?
It's a chancel.
Can I see a way in?
You can. It looks as though you can simply walk in if you go to the right spot on the edge. It'll be a little bit of a walk to get there, and people in the city don't seem extra specially comforted by all of this. There's a nervous energy running through the populace of Taraxis' largest city. There are also a number of places, sort of especially closer to the ocean in the city, where you can see the behemoths of the deep and a few of the siren rays in evidence, though they do seem to be something that the townsfolk give a wide berth. They avoid them, but there is no active conflict.
Our last work. I've got a sneaking suspicion that I know Itirius is not acting like himself.
You mean he's powering this?
If we've encountered this before, it's a reasonable assumption that if there is a chancel of darkness here,
then madness and revelry are not far behind.
Indeed.
Well, on the one hand, a wide open door makes this feel more like a trap than ever, but on the other, dealing with one chancel before there are three seems pertinent, prudent, timely.
How do we... Well, I'm not going to... I'm not going to suggest that.
You don't want to what?
Tyrius may be lost to us as it is. What would be the best case scenario if that turns out to be the case? It's not my call to make.
I don't feel that it should be mine either. If Timos is not lost to us, then ideally he should have a say. But I would say, from my perspective, preventing additional losses would be the priority. I mean, if he's lost to us and there are 100 more who are more than disturbed by what's happening,
contemplating this is not going to get us any farther.
It's
I know
not.
it is a bit ironic of me to say.
Murder is right. Let's proceed.
Murder might be right in more ways than one.
So you proceed through the city. You approach the dome of darkness. The estate is not a regular shape, but the dome seems, and Leorian, you would know this better than either of the others, to encompass all of the estate within a circle, and so it passes through neighboring buildings, gardens, in some places where the arc of the circle sort of, cuts through as it encompasses the irregularly shaped Kelavan estate. The area that Robnet has brought you to, where entry is possible, is not an entrance that you have ever used, not close to an entrance you have ever used, but it's also just an aperture, metaphorically, not visually, in the exterior of the dome, and not actually a structural door or archway or gate or anything like that.
Shall we?
In the absence of a better option.
Mm-hmm.
I will hold out each of my hands towards my companions. Let's not get separated.
I take your hand closest
keep
to me.
the hilt in the hand, my dominant hand,
Mhm.
and take Romnet's hand with my other.
I mimic Lissa keeping her hand on the hilt by keeping my hand on my lure. The picture is probably a lot more awkward and a lot less imposing than her, but nonetheless.
Thus, hands clasped, you step through the Dome of Darkness, and you find yourself in a courtyard that will be vaguely familiar to Leorian, that you did not spend too much time here. It has a familiar silver limning, the type that was ubiquitous in Fermata, though this is perhaps less bright. Otherwise, the darkness is absolute. It is sort of like walking through a sketch done in a sort of faint silver on black paper, though everything is, at the very least, quite solid. And you can see the buildings of the estate sort of looming before you. You don't hear much, but it does seem that sound is muted here.
Should we seek an audience with the god of this chancel? Under peaceful intent?
If at all possible.
I'll basically reach out towards the border that we have just crossed and knock on the inside.
You sort of marshal your spirit a little bit and knock on the inside some, and there is an unplaceable sense of being noticed, and a few long moments of stillness before a door into the courtyard flies open, and Timos, barely visible until he gets close, and then a welcome splash of color in his Kelavan finery, comes running up, and he throws his arms around Leorian. Oh, you're here, thank goodness. I hope that you could figure out what's going on.
Does he look normal with the sight?
He does, yeah. He looks like one of Leorian's anchors. You can see the sort of faint echo of Leorian's Octoritas around him. He sort of collects himself a little bit, and he says, no one has been able to leave. Many of the staff are nowhere to be found, and Father has been in the Great Hall with a number of the family and some of the guests for quite some time. It's hard to tell time here with no light, but it has seemed quite a while. Thank you for coming.
We'll do what we can. And you said your Lord Father is acting unusual. What manner of unusual?
Well, mostly that he has sequestered himself and those with him in the Great Hall. He seems unconcerned as far as anyone outside of the Great Hall has been able to tell, with the change to the estate and the lack of access to the city as a whole. I haven't spoken to him. Yes.
Kieran?
lesser divination of murder.
Mm-hmm.
Are there 100 of them nearby?
Yeah, very familiar. Interestingly enough, though, when you focus, they aren't inside this dome.
Ooh.
You
It's not the best news.
aren't entirely sure they're in the city, but you're not entirely sure what the bearing relates to. As I believe this is your first time in the campaign coming to Caladan.
Mm-hmm.
You would have been here before with
Well,
your troop, but maybe not in some time.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Can I end them?
You think you're going to have to be outside of the dome, but yes, with the application of power, you should be able to do so.
Okay. Good to know.
Mm-hmm.
I am sorry to meet you under such circumstances, but I'll be straightforward. We suspect your father might be under the control of malevolent forces, and should they withdraw their control, well, we believe that your father may not. We'll do our best, but we don't think that we can save him.
I see. He says this, leaning back to look up at you. He extends a shaky hand and says, Timos Calavan, at your service.
Alyssa Crate, Furious Queen, at yours.
He gives a gracious, if shaky, nod and then sort of turns to Romnet and he says, Welcome to my family estate, such as it is, sir. Timos Calavan. And he holds out his hand to shake.
I will shake his hand. Pleasure. Romnet. Prophet.
He glances with a sort of smile as the handshake finishes at Leorian and says, You do keep interesting company these days. I always knew you would eventually. Well,
I'll take that as a compliment, and it's a specialized problem. I thought I would bring my close friends who are specialists.
Indeed, I appreciate whatever assistance you can render, and he looks at us. I appreciate your candor. Shall I take you then to the Great Hall? It seems that may have been Father's intention. I was merely told by a page to come out to the courtyard and surmised that it would be you here, since no one else can get in or out.
We did draw attention upon our arrival, yes.
I see. Well, allow me. And he retreats into the normalcy of entertaining at a noble estate, leading you through the courtyard, back through the door that he came through. The inside of the manor does have lamps lit, which makes it easier to navigate, though you do have to sort of cross through a smaller building and into a larger one, and then make your way to sort of the architectural middle sort of spine of that, and then turn right. And he gestures, Timos does, at a couple of doors, large, ornate, old, and says, well, they're in there. I haven't been allowed in myself since they went in, but presumably they'll either let you in or I'll be unable to keep you out. Thank you for doing whatever you can, and I realize it may be a foolish request, but if at all possible, be gentle with the old man. He's strong for his age, and something is going on with him now, but well, he shrugs a shoulder and drops a little bit of his mannered affect and says, he's my father. And sort of takes a couple steps back to loiter near the wall. I will also add, it probably was not lost on any of you that you didn't see anybody else in the various hallways as you came here.
Mm-hmm. Was there anything interesting in the sight on the way?
I mean, not really on the way, but you can sense a fairly solid Octoritas through the doors of the Great Hall. In fact, it is a little familiar. You beheld it not that long ago in the square in Fermata.
I look to our company and directly, as much as like I can capture his eyes. I can promise you whatever gentleness mercy will allow.
Well, I can't promise better than that. I would that I could. I think we'd best go inside.
All right. Leorin, you lead the way to the doors, and pushing upon them, the sort of counterweighted action of the doors opening is smooth, the darkness beyond absolute until you step through, at which point the room on the other side, a great hall that you have been in before, though rarely, is lit but dimly. And at the head of the table sits, much as you ever have seen him before, Tyrios Calivan, arrayed, not at a full table in terms of seating. Down either side are family and dignitaries. They are eating, drinking, laughing. Music is coming from somewhere that you can't see anyone playing it. And upon your entrance, the doors slowly swing closed behind you without any sense of finality. You think you could probably leave if you wanted to, at least physically. Nothing would get in your way. But Tyrios Calivan stands up at the head of the table, raising a glass, and booms in a familiar voice that is somewhat stronger than you remember hearing it last. In fact, Lissa, you have briefly interacted with Tyrios Calivan near the beginning of the campaign, and he does seem more vigorous now than he was then, though nothing too stark. And over the sort of general murmur of the festivities in front of him and between him and the three of you, he raises his goblet. He says, "Welcome, welcome. It is good to see all of you dignitaries, so to speak. Come and sit. Celebrate with us the foundation of a godhead in Calivan." And that's where we'll end our session. That concludes this session of Dice Punks. You can all have one mortal experience point and I guess, lingering sense of foreboding until the next time we record.
The gift that keeps on giving.
Feel free to note it on your character sheet or not as you desire. Thank you, listeners, for joining us. I hope our players and listeners have enjoyed it as much as I did, and that you'll join us again next time. Thank you for bearing with me while I fought through some sickness. I don't know what the editing will be like on this, but I kept coughing and blowing my nose and sighing and things, so hopefully very little of that will come through. Thank you for bearing with me. If you're hearing us now, then you probably know where to listen to this, but we can be found almost any place one can listen to podcasts, as well as on the wider web at dicepunks.com and on Twitter as @dicepunks, at least while that site still exists. With that, I think we're ready to say farewell. So say goodbye to the kind folks at home, players.
Thanks so much for listening. As ever, treasure your friends. Always lean on them when you need to mourn, and remember them when it's time to act.
We appreciate you, dear listeners. Don't be afraid to dole out whatever gentleness is or is not appropriate for a given situation.
Thanks for listening, folks. And if always, Be prepared to take the building down with you.
And as the poet once said, where do you go with your broken heart in tow? What do you do with the leftover you? And how do you know when to let go? Thank you for tuning in, dear listeners, and stick around through the admin stuff for a Romnet murder. The songs in this episode, Theme of the Dice Punks in its acoustic version, were written and recorded by the Viscount of Tempo and his element Drew. Cover art is by Joanne, who has appeared on the podcast now and again. Check out her work around the internet where she goes by Anything Sews. Site design and graphics for DicePunks.com are by Robin, the player behind Lissa and Mavia, Nobilis of Darkness, Fury, and the Forge. Rain and the one-roll engine it runs on were created by Greg Stolze, whose work can be found in a lot of places, but I'll point you toward gregstolze.com. Nobilis was created by Jenna Caterin Moran and can be found alongside much of her other work at afarandsunlessland.wordpress.com. Links to both systems and authors can be found on the Punk Grimoire section of our website, dicepunks.com. Thanks so much for listening. If you liked what you heard, that's a reward enough on its own, really, but if you're so inclined, you can help us out by rating and reviewing us wherever you listen to us, telling your friends who you think would like us to give us a listen, and even by heading over to our Patreon at patreon.com/dicepunks. We have fun rewards available to backers, including a patron-only Discord and access to the Dice Peaks After Show for episodes 1 and following. Regardless, we hope you'll tune in again, and until then, remember, subtlety is for cowards.
Kill your darlings, they say. Be ruthless about it. Be intent. That's not merely a killing, that's a murder. There is intentionality to it and purpose. Judgment, too, if it's done properly. After all, they're darlings for a reason. The problem is that some darlings don't serve the narrative, don't fill their proper role, don't fit. Those are the darlings that deserve death, though we may nevertheless love them. So take them out, but then lay them out in fitting memory, and preserve those darlings for future use. But in any event, dear listeners, go forth and edit, in my name and with my blessing.